It is on me. Good morning. Hi, this is Melissa Schwartz. Welcome to our Monday Mastermind. We've got a special guest today, a home inspector, Benjamin, and I'll be switching this over so you can see him in just a second. He is with Protect Property Inspections. We thought with these high temperatures, what a great time to speak with an inspector to find out what the challenges have been with these home inspections recently. And then we've got a lot of people here, both online and in person. We'll have a chance to ask some questions of the inspector. So let me introduce you to Ben.
Hi, just want to introduce myself. My name is Ben. A lot of times if you're working with me, you'll see it says Benjamin, but once you know me, it's actually Ben. So that's how we go with that. Can I do a quick survey and just catch some names real quick?
Sure.
Because I'm horrible with names.
So I'm Melissa. I'll start with that.
Okay.
Managing broker here.
I'm Holly Beeler.
Nice to meet you, Holly.
And Gardner.
And
Lucinda Conley.
Dave Bogats.
what was the first name?
Dave.
Dave. Gotcha.
Sarah Tappan.
Sarah.
Julia Quintana.
Julia.
Buzz.
Buzz. Nice to meet you guys. First of all, to start off, I kind of speak from the hip sometimes. I try to keep things as real and authentic as possible. With that being said, how do you guys feel about home inspectors in general?
Love them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very important part of the process.
I'm in the wrong place.
I'll be tough. Sometimes
Surface,
sometimes.
expand on that, please.
But as a buyer, my dad was a builder, so sometimes we felt like we got our home inspection, then we bump through later, and we're like, oh, wow, 3 or 4 things get missed. So that's sometimes I experience as a buyer.
So you feel the home inspectors don't dig deep enough?
Depends on who it is.
And don't take
I
the
think it
time?
depends. I think the problem is that there's sort of like, a lot of people call them home inspectors and some are better than others.
Right.
But it's
Right.
the issue.
And some are picky about things I feel like they shouldn't be and
Okay.
Right.
and aren't picky enough about the important things.
Yeah.
Okay, give me an example. Not to put you on the spot.
I know, just kind of like even physical things, maybe if they note like painting issues or this or that, just what I consider more cosmetic type
Right.
things isn't a big concern to a buyer. And then it makes them concerned when they see it on the home inspection report. They start thinking dollar signs, things at the top.
It distracts them from the real problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're looking at.
Back to scratching the surface, you're like, looking at the little thing that,
Right.
easy
Okay.
to find, but not the.
Right.
That makes sense.
Outlet or.
Right.
Okay, so I'm gonna go off script because like I said, I shoot from the hip. In doing that, what would your advice be to a home inspector to not do that, other than saying, don't be picky? What would your solution be?
Maybe even just come up with some generalized statements that, the job isn't to be looking at cosmetic, issues. It's just to look at more of the hardcore mechanical and problems and issues and code violations,
Right.
things like that. Like
Yeah.
maybe disclose that
Okay,
up front.
are you okay with inspectors that maybe cite a code violation?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
okay, all right, good. And so you guys are actually opposite. You don't like the detail and you do, but you have a limit maybe?
Well, no, I guess I wasn't being clear. For me, there seems to be a lack of uniformity, and maybe there is, as to
There
what you're
is.
required to disclose. I'm looking for the.
Gotcha.
Like she is, what's the expensive stuff for the client? What's gonna really cost me
Yeah.
money? I can see it, it's something scratch or I can use it in the room. But what can I expect from a home inspector that they're actually going to deliver consistently, no matter who I hire? Is there a regulation as to what you're required to provide?
Okay,
Yeah.
I can touch base on both of those. To answer yours, when inspectors are different, there is a course that we take. If you do the one with the swimming pool and everything, you're going to be in excess of 100 hours of classroom training. You're going to go through 30 parallel inspections, and that's with another trained inspector so they can sign off on your work and see how you perform. And they're there to critique you and make you better. We like to say at PPI that we always want to be better and we're always learning. I actually did probably 70 parallel inspections. And the only reason why is because the arrangement I had with the inspector when I came into the trade. So I did more than most. My background is different than most. I feel like some of the inconsistencies personally are people, especially during COVID, needed something to do. So everybody jumped online and got a license. And some of those people may or may not know anything about the construction process. I think that kind of handcuffs certain individuals, inspectors, when they don't know what's underneath, so they don't know how to speak to it. So when you come to one of my presentations after I've done my thorough assessment of the residents, is I ask you up front, what are your main concerns? So today we're inspecting your home. What are your main concerns? Because I want to know that I've really addressed those concerns specifically, but more so I'm going to follow that up by telling you the process of the home inspection briefly before we do our walkthrough. And then I'm going to explain to you that not everything contained in the report is bad. There's deficiencies and there's defects. Defects we need to address. Deficiencies are concerns. Now, specifically within our reports are graded in the color of blue, orange, and red. Red, typically, we save that for a safety concern. Do it now. The biggest scenario that I use on that are pool inspections. Pool inspections don't have door alarms or self-closing gates. Those are going to be red because those are safety items. If it's an electrical issue, that's truly an electrical issue, the house is full of aluminum wiring, that's going to be red. Some people are still okay with aluminum wiring. I can only make the suggestion, but to me, it's in red, it's going to be red. I'm not going to change it. Orange items are things that we think you should put on your list and have them addressed in an appropriate manner for you, your budget, and whatnot. Blue items are monitoring, like stucco. A brand new house, stucco is going to have spider cracks on the outside. They're typically going to be small. So we're going to say, hey, we're going to monitor those. If they get worse, then we'll address them. So that gives you the blue, orange, red. So as I'm going through the inspection, the way we do our inspections is we start out front in most cases, and we'll start at the water meter. We're going to point that water meter out. We're going to briefly tell them what the water meter does and why it's there. And then we're going to walk around the perimeter of the house, and we're going to point out the things that we found during that inspection process. In that process, we're going to stop and chat if we need to. If they have questions, we'll stop the whole show and explain what we need to explain, because that's why we're there. They're paying us a decent amount of money to look at a significant investment. So we're going to walk around the outside of that house, and we're going to look at everything, and we're going to tell them, is it going to be blue? Is it going to be red? It's going to be orange. And then, of course, if they need to dive a little deeper, then we can do that. Or if we need to take it inside to discuss it, because now it's 115, 16 degrees outside. And for those that don't know, it's 145 to 155 degrees in most attics. And that's unbearable for most people, me included. I had an episode last week. So we then come to the inside and we do the same thing. We go room to room. And as I will tell any client, just like I'll tell any realtor, we're not here to browbeat the house, and we're not here to tear it apart, tell you how bad it is. We're just here to point out the things that we've seen as a deficiency or a defect. So then you have the material you need to address those issues within that home. And we do commercial as well. So we do the same thing with a commercial property. So that's how our inspection takes place. Now, that being said, you figure the average home right now in Phoenix is about $540,000 for the average home. So for someone to come in and hire an inspection company, and we do all the ancillaries, we do swimming pool, we do sewer scope, we do mold, we do indoor air quality, we do everything. And we do it, what's that?
Termite?
We do termite. We do termite currently through a third party, but we're currently going through some up training to where we're going to do that in-house, the process. And we're going to be teamed up with a termite company that's going to back that. So to be able to provide all of those services, unless a home gets over 3,000 square feet, you're probably going to be below $1,000 on the total cost of a, let's just say for simplicity, a pile of ancillaries. So if you're quick at math, 540,000 versus $1,000 investment, you're at 0.001% of the price of that house. And some people will balk at that. They're like, well, why are we paying $600 for a home inspection? 0.001% to protect the $500,000 investment. That's pretty good. So I'm not trying to justify the cost. I'm just trying to explain that a lot of times, you know, they may even come to you guys and say, man, that's an awful lot of money. 500,000 is a lot more. So, you know, it's, I can't think of the right terminology.
They ask it all the time.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Well, the next time, if you want to be powerful about it, say this is a $500,000 home, you're at 0.001%. That's good odds.
I always say
You
that
know.
they typically find more than that with problems that the seller is willing to repair.
Yes.
You know, they get back their money.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, and it comes in waves for all of the inspectors at my company. I'm going through I just came through a rut to where I had a couple of issues, and then those were cleared up. Some things that I found, and then some things that that they thought I didn't find, I actually did, but then I went back and explained everything, and they're like, oh, okay. Because sometimes we just all need to get on the right page. One of the big problems of being on the wrong page is communication and text messages. And I'm guilty of it just like anyone else. I'm going to hit you guys real quick because you hear things about home inspectors. What do you feel like is the number one complaint regarding realtors that we hear?
Communication.
Communication, number one. What about number two?
Lack of clarity.
That could be two, but I haven't, I mean, I've heard that, but the answer I'm looking for is more so concerning the relationship of the realtor and the inspector.
So elaborate on that.
So they're not working together as a team or?
Or that they
They
are.
are, I think, it's what they are.
Sometimes they do. Yes, sometimes they do. And that's kind of a side door to where I'm going. But the number one complaint is, well, show of hands, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot. How many of you guys, when a home inspection happens with one of your buyers, shows up?
Right.
That's my number one complaint. I'm running through lately some agents that don't show up. And it's no one from this office because I've never done an inspection for anyone here. So our company hasn't either that I know of. But I know a couple of realtors that won't show up. That's an extreme disservice to the buyer.
Yeah, it's huge.
Okay, I understand sometimes people have vacations planned and whatnot, and sometimes they'll plug in other agents to cover them, and that's perfectly fine. I don't say anything bad about that. And I never say anything bad to a client if the realtor doesn't show up, because it's unprofessional. You know, I wouldn't expect you to throw me under the bus. I would never throw you under the bus, because we all have things that happen. I've had inspections that I couldn't make, and I had to call and have somebody cover me. And with our company, if you go online to schedule up, you can pick your inspector, and I get requested a fair amount. And I try to take care of those individuals personally. But there's been times where I've had people literally said they would cancel the inspection with us and go to somebody else if I couldn't make it, because they specifically wanted me. It wasn't anything bad, but they're like, we've heard about you. Our whole team uses you. And if you can't show up, I can't hold the inspection up, but I've got to go somewhere else. And I'm like, we're like, I don't know, 7, 9 people deep. And our company is a collective group of individuals. What's that?
That doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't, but I get what he was saying. So, and this is something rare that you won't hear. I haven't heard of another inspector making the offer, but I told them that I knew passionately that the inspector that was stepping into my shoes that day was good. So I said, if you're truly not happy with this inspector, you call me while you're there. I won't say a word to that inspector. I'll come over there. And when I said that, he was stunned. He was like, you're going to do that? And I said, absolutely, I'll do that. I'll show up, and we'll make sure together with the other inspector that everything flows smoothly. Never got a phone call. He was perfectly happy. But I had to sell myself to unsell myself. You know what I mean? I had to have somebody step in my shoes, and I was making an excuse, but I'm willing to stand behind my work. And our company is like that. So, you know, don't ever feel, if you use us, that's great. If you don't, just hold your inspectors accountable and know that they're not going to throw you under the bus. And I would never throw a realtor under the bus. So that being said, show up for your buyers, you know, because a lot of times you already have that relationship with your buyer and I don't. Sometimes there's going to be information that I'm not privy to. Like, I don't always get the spuds. So I don't know some of the insight that you already have with your buyer. There may be things that you've gotten from the seller's agent that didn't transition to me. So I'm not going to know about that. And if you're there, you're that cushion that can convey that. And we both can explain to the buyer if there's a serious issue, we can get through it more easily. So
Yeah, I think those spuds are important. I always show up with a copy of them.
yes,
So that
They
I
are.
can give it to the home inspector to look at.
they are. There's a lot of times where the buyer will ask me a question and I truly don't know it, but I know that it's a possibility it could be in the spuds. And I'll look at the agent and I'll say, were there anything in the spuds? Sometimes they're like a deer in headlights. And sometimes they'll go over and pull it up on their phone. You know, I've been on both sides of that. So it's a relationship, and it's all about how you convey that information. It's like the worst fear for me with dealing with a new realtor is that realtor thinking we are deal killers. And no inspector should be a deal killer, but you need to be not just an inspector that can pick problems, but you need to be able to articulate the message in a successful manner and not speak above someone and not have someone that maybe is nowhere near as educated as you are and make them feel bad because they don't know a certain terminology or a scenario or whatever you're throwing at them. You have to diversify how you talk to different people. We're in the luxury home space. Those people are on a different plane. I've dealt with a lot of engineers lately because of Intel and all these semiconductor places. Some of those engineers talk some language I've never heard, and I've been around a lot of people. We have an investor that we deal with on a regular basis. And sometimes that guy gets to running and I'm like, where in the world is this guy going? You know, I feel like I'm talking to a nuclear physicist sometimes. And I grew up with a young lady that her parents were nuclear physicists. And she was odd, but we could communicate. But when we went to her house, you know, it was tough. So you need to be able to speak to people. I've been around several inspectors, and some are just like a doctor with a bad bedside manner. He comes in and says, you know what? You've got a terminal illness and you've got 10 days. That's not a good feeling, you know, versus the doctor that comes in and says, hey, we need to sit down. And then they have a conversation. And one of the things that gets me, I was trained one way, but now I'm another, because at PPI, they taught me that taking that buyer outside that house and walking them around the house and then walking them through the inside of the house, they know, let's just put a round figure of $1,000 on the price of an inspection. They know that $1,000 that they spent was for me to walk around, not only to show them and lead them by the hand and point things out, but they know that I've already done it because I'm walking around showing them what I've already found. Because when we walk around, typically we have one of these iPads or we have a phone, and our stuff is internet based, cloud based, but we also have live apps on the phone and the tablet or whatever. So we walk around and we go, you know what? We found this, we found this, and we found this. So we have these pictures that we've already done. So they know that we performed an inspection. And then we see, or we hope they see, that we know what we're talking about when we're pointing things out. Yes.
So I typically get there 15, 20 minutes before the wrap up.
Yes.
I don't want want to get in his way.
Right.
I want to slow him down. I want him to focus, so I show up at the end.
Right.
And then typically, there's the whole presentation is with an iPad, they circled. Is it similar? Is that kind of what you do?
Exact way. Now, I can expound on that. The way I was trained was by a gentleman. He's an awesome inspector, been a general contractor for 35 years. The guy had knowledge, great knowledge. But in regards to a presentation, a wrap up, a review, whatever term we want to put on that, all of them are great. I have no problem with any of them. When you would get to the residence, he would come in with a couple of bags, computers, all the equipment. It'd be like this end of the table right here. We'd walk in with this. He'd have his and I'd have mine. So we have double this right here. We'd come in, set up on the island or set up on the table, and we would bring our own 2 stools in and we'd post up. At first, I thought that was a cool way to do it because I'm comfortable and I'm sitting there and 9 times out of 10, I'm done with that report before I leave that house. A lot of people, I started seeing some people that were a little uncomfortable because you're encroaching on their space, especially if they live there. If it was an occupied dwelling, we're in their space and we're camped out and they're having to leave their house for 3 hours and they're already ticked that they're doing that. Doesn't matter, they're making $100 grand on the sale or not. You're in their space and I respect their space. Even if it's a vacant home, you should respect that space and not move into it. So then when I came to PPI, the first thing they said was, we're going to get you out of your comfort zone. I'm like, all right, let's see what that's about. And the first thing they did was walk me around the house. And that was probably the single most uncomfortable thing I've done at PPI. The guy that was training me at PPI, his name is Jay. Jay's phenomenal, knowledge out of this world. But that intimidated me. And I'm usually not the one in the room that's intimidated. I'm shy, but I don't usually get intimidated. But walking around and having to learn a new system was very uncomfortable. But now that I'm settled, it's all I want to do is do that. And lately, since it's been hot, I get people to come in and I give them the option. I have 2 ways to do this review. The normal way is we go out and we'll walk around. I'm going to show you some things and we can do that route, or we can stand inside and we can go over it with the iPad. And then I'll be glad to go address the individual issues so we're not out in the hot sun. And so it kind of gives them an option. And I know sometimes that could be negative, but also what Jay has implemented lately is that it's so hot and we have these afternoon inspections and we're in danger because we're in a 150-degree attic, which is problematic. We now have the option, if you want us to do the inspection, and fine if you show up, and if you don't, you have that option, and we can do it via Zoom, FaceTime, or another manner. And we do that with long distance clients too that can't be here. So we've done that too. But we do have the options and the means necessary to do all that. So we try to accommodate everybody, but sometimes it can get a little awkward is what I'm trying to say, but we all get through it. And then I know buyers, sometimes they feel awkward because they feel like they're being put on the spot, but it's their investment and we're there to help through that process. I've had to talk people through broken slabs, broken trusses, water leaks, bad AC units, you name it. I've been there. I haven't done everything because I run into stuff every single day. I'm fairly new to the Valley. I moved here about 4 years ago. I came from Florida. Florida is a different animal than Arizona when it comes to housing. Has anybody ever been to Florida or know about some of the Florida stuff? Okay, so all the hurricane standards and all that stuff, that's a whole different level of construction. So I feel like it's kind of better, but I've been told here in Arizona, it's the wild, wild west. If you can build it, modify it, get it completed before somebody rats you out, then you can live in it. So probably the worst thing I've ever run into was a house on the side of the mountain. I was called by the owner of the company and he says, hey, would you be willing to go up here? I think it was Prescott, right?
Oh, that one.
Yeah, the
okay,
snow.
yeah.
And it was snowed in. So when we left that morning in the valley, it wasn't so bad. It was nice and cool. But we get up there and there's 2 or 3 feet of snow on the ground on a mountain that when I say vertical, I mean vertical. I'm a Jeep guy. I've been off-road a lot of my life. This thing was a little spooky because I'd always been on the East Coast where it's Everglades, mud, nasty and slip slide. And that's fine. You get into snow and ice, that's a different kind of slippage. And you don't know what's underneath the snow or how deep it is. So we get up this mountain and then we come back down and finally we get our nerves settled. And I go in to look at this place and I think it was 28 degrees that morning. So it was cold. Heat wasn't wanting to work properly. Finally, I got it working. Go underneath the house because the house was let's see, the mountain was like this and the house was off the mountain like this. And it was suspended by wood beams, rocks, not piers, not concrete piers, but rocks, like
And
boulder
logs,
rocks,
yeah,
logs, wood.
I want to say it was in the 60s.
It was in the 60s, but it had been modified extensively.
So it should have been changed.
Oh, it way should have been changed.
The
And then
wheel was frozen.
the what?
Oh,
The well was frozen over, the storage tank was frozen. And we didn't think it at first, but then we got in there and the 2 guys that were buying the property were firemen. We're owned by a firefighter and it was his firefighter buddies. And so we get out a pick and we climb a ladder and we pull the lid off and we start jabbing a pick in it. And it was solid ice for 3 feet, 3 feet thick that was frozen over. So it was a horrible situation. So we go out and one of the posts was sitting on a rotted tree stump and it was holding the corner of the house up.
wow.
So when I say I've seen scary stuff, to me, that's scary. But he didn't care. They were buying this thing for an Airbnb and they were going to make modifications to it.
There's the.
I would have been afraid.
So yeah. So I've,
Sign this waiver, please.
yeah. So I've seen, since I've been here in the valley, inspection wise, I think I'm up there in the
I was
numbers
thinking
as
about
far
the
as
one at
inspections.
Capitol that was Sliding off the hill. Yeah, they bought it anyway. You don't remember that one?
You'll have to, you'll have to narrow that one down. But what I'm getting at is real quick. I've had probably less than 5 houses that I could honestly say in some way, shape or form, I conveyed it to the realtor that was going to be a bad idea. And 5 out of a few hundred is pretty decent. I mean, the houses overall are fairly decent. What we're running into now is the houses built in the last 3 years are problematic. Those are the ones we need to concentrate on because of COVID. Lack of good material shortages. So sometimes stuff just found its way to the job site and that's what they utilize.
Are there
And-
particular builders that, I mean, you probably can't mention them, but that you have seen that are consistently worse?
This is being
Uh,
recorded to see.
Yeah. In full disclosure.
Go there.
In full disclosure, in 100% honesty, on camera, off camera, my answer to that is no,
Okay,
not a specific builder.
okay.
And I didn't forget you yet. I'll say it like this. I use this scenario quite a bit when I walk into a new home construction because there's a particular inspector on TikTok and Instagram, and he literally roasts these new builders. I mean, it's one thing to call out and say things. It's another thing to roast
Yeah.
somebody. And he roasts them. He's over 100,000 followers, so he's serious. He's good at his job. I pull no punches with him. He's good at his job. But he's the hammer. We're the feather. And the reason why I say it like that is you win a lot more with sugar than you would with salt. So
So I have a question.
hold on to that thought. As a builder, you've got the builder here at the top. And then you have project manager, and then you have construction superintendents. Let's just say this side of the table has one community and this side of the table has another community. You're the project manager, and you guys are the superintendents. And you guys run a tight ship and you're shopping your houses every single day and you're signing off on every single thing that your subcontractors do. And you guys just totally drop the ball. You're partying, drinking, lunches, whatever. Yeah. So at the end of the day, the builder gets a bad reputation. Is it the builder's fault? I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, it is.
Sure.
It is. But
They don't rein in
Supposed
those
to be.
superintendents.
exactly. It rolls downhill. So the builder holds you two accountable and you hold these guys accountable. But let's just say it got out of hand for a couple of months. And you guys went rogue. And you guys were holding the line. And all of a sudden now the builder's on a TV commercial or a news bit about how bad they are about what they did and how they can't build a proper house. They're still building proper houses.
Yeah.
But they're still not. So I think it's unfair to say a builder is bad. I think it's different. I'm going to put it on the superintendent because he's the first line. He's the first boss on that job because the subs answer to a super. As a super's not holding those subs accountable, then it's the sub and he gets a shot to change or hit the road. And then it goes from there. So a builder can get a bad reputation based on his people. But at the end of the day, the builder is the responsible party for that reputation. So I kind of defend the builder. I kind of do that because I used to be one. And it rolls downhill and there's some hard meetings. And, you know, we can come into a meeting 30 people deep and walk out with 10 people because the other 20 went home. And I get that. But short answer is I don't have any one builder. And, you know, if you dig deep enough, you'll hear a lot.
Well, and I think to that point, though, is in 2020, what you're talking about is there were supply shortages.
Mhm.
And it probably depended on what those superintendents did to solve whatever problem they were facing that day. And if
Yes,
any of you were out there with clients that were demanding their homes when they were stopped because stuff couldn't get in, it was tough. And so I could see how some superintendents found a way around the problem, and it may not have been the best answer. And
Right.
now we're seeing some of those issues, but also it could only be 1, 2, 3 homes and not everything that builder was building.
Right.
It could
Correct.
just be a few, you know, incidents there. But it is interesting to think about the homes that were built in 2000 and what, or in, I'm sorry, 2020.
yes,
Wrong set of numbers. Wrong decade. But in 2020, that those would have created some challenges with the overall quality of the homes. Exactly. So,
100%.
you know, two things I wanted to ask. We have a couple of brand new agents here. Not everybody, we got some very experienced agents here.
Yeah.
And a couple of brand new ones. So to the brand new agents, and some of us older ones might learn something, what would be the 2 things that you would share with a brand new agent about, I mean, you've already said show up, number 1,
Right.
But beyond that, what would you say about the home inspection process that you can help maybe the spuds, get the inspector the spuds?
Any information that you have, kind of like an appraisal. When just before the appraisal process happens, you guys are now doing packets sometimes to help the appraiser see the big picture. Treat us the same way. If you have any documentation, or even if it was verbal, just send it over to the inspector so that inspector has as much knowledge going in. Like I went into a home a couple of weeks ago, didn't know anything about the house other than what I saw on print. But a year before, they had a busted pipe that required professional remediation. So I was there to do an air quality test. I needed to know why and where and the reason behind it. But going in blind with just a sheet of paper that said you're doing a home inspection and an air quality test, I had nothing beyond that. So the information you can provide is good because it helps the inspector. Because if it were a busted pipe that required remediation, we kind of need to look at that area a little more solid to make sure that everything was done correctly. You're still hiring professional companies like remediation companies and such, and they're supposed to do a professional job, but that takes us right back to new home construction. They're supposed to build a quality home with no issues, and things get overlooked or dropped. So we're not there to say, hey, they were horrible and did a bad job. It's like they did a great job, but they butchered up this baseboard when they put it back together. Doesn't mean that they're horrible. Things can get missed, and we're not there to beat someone's reputation in the ground. We're just there to tell you what we see and how we think you can go about correcting that issue. So that would be probably number one thing. The other thing is, as you become a more experienced realtor, I have a couple of realtors that I deal with and some that I previously dealt with, and they would do my review for me. And I'm just looking at you because you like to show up and you do it 15 minutes early and you give them their space. That's exactly what we like. Even if you were there for the whole process, it's awesome as long as we can do our job,
Right.
because we wouldn't want to walk in on you writing a contract and interrupt that.
That brings me to my question. then.
Okay.
And I have a few minutes ago. So when after you've done your review, what do you typically do? Who do you communicate with first? Let's say you had a house that you found some really major issues and they were a deep concern and you're not sure that this is a house these people should purchase. Do you speak with a realtor first, or do you wait and disclose that during the review?
I'm not really there to tell them to buy the house or not buy the
Right,
house.
I'm
I
just
can't
saying
do
you
that.
saw that it was really a catastrophic thing.
I'm going to convey that in a way that's professional, but ultimately it's between that agent and the client to make a decision on whether or not to move forward. It's my job to give them the information they need to make that decision. It's like,
It'll be
Melissa-
lots of red print. on
yes,
that.
yeah. Well, the big thing is I like this will be our house, but Melissa, this thing, it's been underwater 4 or 5 times. I dropped it in a pool. Screen's been cracked 4 or 5 times. It's 6 years old. Here. Do you want to buy something like that? Probably not, because it's had a lot of issues. But I can say everything was performed by Apple and it's in good shape. It's in good working order. I currently don't have any issues with it.
And it's cheap.
And it's cheap. But
That's
you-
what you needed.
yeah, I just kind of provide all the evidence, and so you can make that decision. And then I always tell them at the end of every wrap up, I always say to the client, I'll tell them everything you need will be, emailed over to you either within an hour or 24 hours, depending on how big the house and all the issues. The first thing I recommend you do is look over your report. The second thing I recommend you do, if you have any questions whatsoever, first, go to your realtor, go to your agent, because that's who you're discussing your transaction with, and that's your negotiating partner. Now, if it's an issue that your agent can't answer, call me, text me, email me. I tell everybody that every single time. If it's just a quick question, same thing, contact me. I'll be glad to answer it for you. So I always point them to their realtor because that's where they should be going for those answers. And then I've had clients ask me, would you buy this house? That's the number one question.
Oh, wow.
They always say that.
Oh,
Would you buy this house? And each inspector can answer that how they want to. But what I tell them, if they're asking me about that with one that has a lot of issues, I tell them, if it fits not your business model, but if it fits your needs and you're okay with the items that need to be repaired, whether or not somebody else repairs them or you take it on financially, if it's within your budget and financially you're okay with it, then that's up to you to move forward. That's the best way that I've come up with to tell them yes and no as a yes and no, because it's not my decision. What they're willing to live with is up to them. We did a multi-million-dollar property that was going to require $350,000 in repairs. And we articulated that as professionally as we could. And the post on the outside, it's full of termites. Little did we know the gentleman that was buying the house was a former professor at the University of Florida that had invented something to do with termites. And he wasn't scared. He's
Right.
like, I don't have a problem. I'm writing a check for the $350,000. We're buying the house. They moved forward with it. So he could move forward because he was comfortable.
Right.
But if it would have been somebody that was terrified of termites, they'd have been like, oh my gosh, I'm running to the East Coast
Mhm.
because I can't handle termites.
Well, then they get flying ones, so.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
With subterranean.
Yes.
easier.
So that's the main difference is if you're okay with it, it's between you and your agent. I cannot tell you to buy it or not to buy it.
I guess I would think, and I'm one of the new agents, I'm coming from a legal background.
Okay.
I'm hearing a lot of questions and I just filter it through my brain. So like she asks, would you tell the realtor first? And I'm sitting there thinking, well, his obligation is to tell the client because that's who hired him.
Correct.
And I completely hear what you're saying about wanting to have that first level of conversation. I hear what you're saying about I wanting to kill the deal and she's the negotiation partner. I get all that stuff. But I guess I would see you more as an expert because I've been a trial lawyer.
Right.
Your job is solely to convey the specialized knowledge that pertains to making the decision the jury need to make. The argument comes to the lawyer. And I would present your information as, and if you had a question, my job is like, let's go back to him and ask him a question. Like, what does that mean?
Right.
Explain to us the science of this.
Correct.
Explain to us the specialized knowledge and that you present that to your inspector that way. This is the person with specialized knowledge.
Yes.
Help us help you make the decision, and I will give you my best advice in that,
Yes.
or how we can negotiate the better deal for you within this budget, because this is what fits the budget.
Yes. Yes.
It down.
Yes.
Obligations, like, each have
Right.
certain obligations in the deal. I think that's important to keep that, I think, as a lawyer. Keep
It
that
is.
In mind is whose role everyone's playing.
It is.
And to jump on that, I would remind everyone that, like both of you were saying, where you were saying, David, that you show up 15 minutes early.
Yeah.
Please, please, please make sure your buyers do not show up early.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
because one of the worst things is for the inspector who then that's their client, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, what did you need?
They're asking.
And
for it.
instead they need to finish their inspection. And what I try to explain to my buyers is, look, they have a checklist to go off of. If you start asking questions in the middle of that checklist, they don't get through the whole checklist.
Right.
You're the one that loses out because they need to go through that whole thing. They're going to go over the entire checklist with you, but let them get through it first. And so as the agent, that's our role to make sure that those buyers don't show up early. Or if they do, we're meeting them there and we're keeping them out of the inspector's way so they can do their job.
Let me expound on that. I had to write a note real quick about that because I'm like a beeline sometimes. The other thing that can be problematic is when it's an occupied property and the seller wants to remain on site. Now, that can be tough and we deal with it a lot. But the number one thing is that seller 9 times out of 10 says that they never knew about the inspection or no one contacted them or they're staying no matter what. And then I'm the inspector has to deal with the fallout. And we're all professionals and we deal with it. But it's helpful to know if it is occupied and you know that as an agent, that you and the seller's agent can get that worked out before we get there.
Right.
It's okay if people are in the house because I understand some people can't leave, work from home, have kids, and I've worked through a lot of situations. And it's okay, but it's uncomfortable when they say they had no knowledge. I mean, that's horrible. And that may not be on the buyer's agent. It could strictly be the seller's agent. Or if these people are selling the house on their own, which is rare, they're going to call their own shots. And, older people, sometimes they're, I'm not leaving. I'm staying here and I'm watching everything you do. And that's okay. I'll deal with it. In our program, when you call to do an inspection or you do it online, either way, it begins an automated process within our system. And most people use similar software. I think there's 3 or 4 software options that inspectors use. The one that we use in particular sets up an automated process and it throws out emails to advise you when the inspection is and what to expect, so on and so forth. So you're going to know those time frames, and it will give you our contact information. And then I reach out before I go to an inspection to let you know that I'm on the way. And during the automated process, let's just say your inspection's at 8 o'clock and it's automated. So it's going to automatically tell you that the review is probably at 11 or 12. Well, if I look down, it's a 1,200 square foot house. I'm telling you right now, that's not going to be the case. I'm going to drop you a text or a phone call or both. Say, hey, I'm verifying your 8 AM inspection. Just want to introduce myself. My name is Benjamin. I'll do the inspection, and then we're going to have a review or presentation at 10 or 10:30. And then I usually put a question mark, because usually they've gotten that automated email that says 12. And then that opens a line of communication. They're like, oh no, I thought it was at 12. First response is, if you need it at 12, I'll accommodate, but I'll be ready at 10:30. And then we move that process around. So we do communicate, and I usually communicate that with the buyer's agent as well, because I've gotten in trouble from just telling one and not telling the other, because sometimes the buyer won't tell the agent wanted to be there, and I'm critiquing them for not being there. And then it's just, it's a little bit of a show.
So important, whether you're the buyer or the seller's agent, that you communicate and make sure the utilities are on.
Yes.
Because there is an upcharge for that, and you would not believe how many times they go out on inspection and there's no utility, so they can't perform a full inspection.
Yes.
It's in the contract, right?
And a reinspection, real quick, a reinspection as well, because you don't want to go to a reinspection and it's not ready, and then you're another charge,
Right.
trip charge.
And I have a question. Do you provide the seller's agent a copy of the report?
I do not. My obligation is to the client.
Right,
We
okay.
cannot do that. Our obligation is to the client,
Okay.
just like attorney-client privilege. That client's not
Okay.
talking, that client's not talking.
But good question. How many of you know, is it an obligation of the buyer to provide that to the seller?
Yeah.
It
was.
was.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is clearly written in the contract that any report provided to the buyer on that property, a copy is due to the seller. I can't tell immediately. I cannot tell you how many agents think that they don't have to provide it because they're not going to go through with the deal.
Right.
Or, no, we don't need to send you all that. We're just sending you the summary.
Mhm.
No. Any report. If you do a scope, if you do a termite, if you do anything, a copy of that is due to the seller.
But not to
The
escrow.
buyer's agent.
It is not to escrow.
Do not send it to me. Do not,
so
because
does
in the
it-
contract, it says, anything I get, I'm supposed to give to all parties.
Including the
So,
lender.
Including the lender, so.
Right.
Not send it to me, yeah, or the vendor.
Unless it's a
Do not,
cancellation.
yeah, unless it's a cancellation, I don't
Correct.
want your vendor.
Right.
Please don't send it to me.
So I'm gonna throw a
Please,
curveball
please.
here though,
I'll read it
because,
first, then I didn't get it.
so I'm gonna throw a curveball here because we've been talking about different people showing up at the inspections and the sellers being left there. I was always one of those listing agents that would request to go to attend the summary report on behalf of the seller. Now, that may sound odd, but here's the thing. First of all, I don't want my sellers there. Second of all, the sellers have a right to have representation during that summary report. And there have been times when that saved my clients, because we did have ones. I had a deal where the inspector literally blew up the deal.
Right.
I mean, it was horrible. And the other agent on the other side was brand new. And just, you all know I love to talk, but in that role, and I tell the other agent, I will be in the background. If you have a question for me, you as the agent need to ask me, because otherwise I'm not talking, right? I'm in the background. I'm going to be here for the report and then I'm leaving. Give you plenty of time to have your conversation with the inspector. I value that. It is your time for you to talk to your buyer. But this agent was brand new. The inspector literally blew up the deal. There were firefighters that were buying it. And the inspector said that the fireplace had breached the wall and it was broken. And if you had a fire in there, it was going to cause it.
Oh,
That was
wow.
just one
Okay.
of the things. And it was not true at all. There was no separation. It was not true at all. But at any rate, the other agent, it was an FHA deal. The other agent didn't even know. I mean, some of the things that we found out did need to be repaired. There was no question about that. Had they just asked, the seller was going to make those repairs. And they just didn't know to do that. But here's the kicker. The inspection company also made a deal with them that they didn't have to write up the report and they discount their fee. So they had no report to provide because they didn't get one. And had I not been there taking my own notes, I would not have known the critical issues that did need to be fixed. And we weren't in argument with that. We took it off the market for a week, got the repairs done, sold it for $5,000 more the next week. And had no problems at the inspection, by the way.
Yeah.
So, but the point is that there are a lot of agents that hate it when another agent wants, the listing agent wants to be there. It is your call and how you want to try to do that, but I will tell you time and time again, it made a difference to
Another
my
thing I
client.
had your presentation on why you're so special.
There you go.
Good point.
There you go.
Sure,
You do the source scoping.
yes.
What age home do you recommend? to have that
Beginning
done?
that.
That's all.
Yeah.
You want the honest answer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Any.
home.
Any home. Two reasons. Can I give those two real quick? The worst one that I know about, I personally was there during the inspection. We, at that time, did not do this particular sewer scope. It was a 2-story, 1.2 in Scottsdale. And the builder kind of strong-armed the people to close the deal and get in the house because it was taking so long. It was a COVID house. They moved in and within 1 week started smelling stuff everywhere. Didn't know what was going on. Stuff was backing up everywhere. And this home was no more than a couple of weeks old as far as closing, moving in. So they called someone out. Plumber at first couldn't find the problem. So then they come out to scope it. Brand new home. Is everyone here familiar with post-tension slabs? How they have the cables, you don't drill it, you don't bore it. This was post-tension. So they brought out an engineer, they brought out the plumbing company, they brought out the builder and another contractor. What they ultimately found out $45,000 later was before they pulled the slab, someone shoved a 2x4 completely through the PVC waste pipe. No one repaired that issue. They went ahead and poured the slab, built the home, moved in, and you got raw sewage going everywhere in the ground. The reason why it cost so much money is from the back and forth. These folks were displaced for, I think, 2 months. They'd only been in the house for like a week. And to get through that slab took special equipment and an engineer and a big fiasco to make it happen. So that's my worst case. The other one is out in the West Valley. A lot of homes, they'll build up because it's low-lying areas. So they'll build up with dirt or backfill rock, what have you. All of the pipes in this particular home had been put in, and the contractor, I guess you could say, wasn't the best contractor. So they came in and they tamped everything down with a tamper. That they usually do that when they're doing brick pavers. They tamp everything down with a tamper. Well, they tamped down
Foundation.
before they did the foundation. And what that caused was the pipes are flexible.
Oh, yeah.
So the pipes got pushed down in places. So this home was full of bellies. And,
Wow.
you know, when you have a belly more than 50%, that's definite repair. So those are my two worst case scenarios, and both of those were brand new construction.
Can I rephrase? that?
Sure.
At what age home do you find the most problems with this?
Oh, it's not necessarily the age, what's in the yard. 9 times out of 10, it's big trees, tree roots. But if you're steering a little more toward Old Town and Orangeburg pipes, those are problematic. Those are the most problematic pipes, 60s and 70s.
Yeah, okay.
That's it.
I was thinking anything before 75.
Yes, I would say anything 78 and back.
Yeah.
And then there's also, if you don't already know about it, there are a couple of online sites that provide a map that show you the areas that are problematic for Orangeburg. So if you get in that area, you can pull that map up and it'll show you the areas of Phoenix that have Orangeburg pipe.
What is? the
Orangeburg.
What is Orangeburg?
It's a soft clay pipe. And when I say soft, how many people?
Like the original, like probably like the 20s or something?
Well,
Yeah,
it
it was
could have been
way back.
1950s and
Could it
60s.
have been?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, how many people have seen a sewer scope? So normally when you see a sewer scope, that pipe looks nice and round and usually just has some wearing on the sides of the walls and such. So it could be plastic, it could be concrete, cast iron. So that all looks familiar. Orangeburg typically will mushroom down and it will get oval shaped. And when you go through the transitions, the edges of the pipe are curled back like soft lead would be. So that's
So Orangeburg is.
Orangeburg.
So BURG.
Think it, don't quote me on that.
Oh,
I
that's all
use
right. All of
Google
us
too
on
much.
Google it, yeah.
Yes, but there are online maps that will show you the exact spots of them. And I ran into one the other day and the piping had been replaced. Didn't know it at the time, but I was prepared for it to be Orangeburg. So I knew I was going to have to take my time because a lot of times a sewer scope can go faster when it's cast iron and plastic. When it's Orangeburg, you really have to slowly pay attention because of the scaling on the walls. There can be cracks, and it's a lot easier for Orangeburg to open up in places where other piping would not. So that would be, is that the answer you're looking
Yeah,
for?
yeah.
Okay.
You mentioned aluminum wiring, but don't all of our homes have aluminum wiring in the 220 for the stove still and for the dryers?
Older ones do.
Yes and yes,
No,
but
newer ones have it too.
Aluminum?
yes,
Oh,
On
it's,
the big line?
yes.
No,
it's-
no. It's on the 220s.
Yeah, it is, but it's,
Yeah.
the caveat to that is it's stranded aluminum
Right.
and not solid aluminum. Solid aluminum, definitely not good. Stranded aluminum is fine because that's what comes in from the city. If you still in the older parts of town where you see the overhead lines
Best
come in.
transition of electrical power. That's why it's
Yes.
used and still is.
And so do they just put like copper where it joins up? Or do
No,
it
on the-
still aluminum?
On the aluminum wiring, they'll replace it, but on the aluminum that is allowed in the panel, like what she is describing, there is a specific paste that's required to go
Oh.
in there that keeps it from corroding and
Oh.
building up that heat.
And we have plenty of homes that have aluminum throughout, and
Mhm.
I happen to own 2 homes that have it, and we did all of our electrical outlets. And now they've come back out with some good aluminum outlets
Mhm.
that you can actually put aluminum to aluminum, so it's much better than the
Yes,
doing the pigtails or even the paste, whatever it's called.
yes,
No locks,
Yes.
no locks, paste. It's kind of like toothpaste, kind of what it.
Oh.
looks
it's just
like,
brown though,
consistency.
so don't use it.
Yeah, yeah, no. So, but some insurance companies will not insure a home that has all aluminum wiring.
True.
Unless you can show that they have gone in and done the pigtails
Yes.
or changed out the outlets so they're aluminum to aluminum, but there are better options today.
It is also nice, different inspectors will go into different depths. Some inspectors will pull every panel off of every electrical panel on the property, and that's perfectly within their workspace. It's not required. We're not required to pull that cover off that panel. Because if we deem it a safety issue, we're not required to do it. It's our option to do it. And a lot of us do that. What I'm saying beyond that is it's nice when your inspector has the ability to do thermal imaging and you can take a thermal image of that panel. And the reason why is you can see hot spots and breakers that are on the cusp of going bad are going to be a glowing red because they build up heat before they actually go bad. So it's nice if they can zap a thermal image of that panel, and then you feel a little more assured that that panel is in good shape. And that can go for a brand new panel as well, because breakers can be bad from the right out of the box. It's not likely, but it's possible. Anything can happen. It's a mechanical product. It can be faulty right out of the box. I was in a house Saturday morning, full remodel, expensive home. Every GFCI receptacle in all of the bathrooms failed to reset, and they were all brand new out of the box. So they just failed to reset. So they're like, there's no power. You can't use it. It wouldn't, push the button, no reset. So they're going to have to go in and replace those receptacles. But that's just to prove the point that it can still be brand new and be bad or
And they
faulty.
love to double tap, like when they
Yes.
come in afterwards.
Yes.
Or-
Yes.
I see that all the time.
Yes, we run into that quite a bit too. It is. It is. It is. But just keep in mind, sometimes the language within an inspection report, it will list the scope. And it will also tell you that certain items are not required, because a lot of people try to come back and say, well, you were supposed to do that. And if the inspector's doing his job professionally and correctly, he knows what he's required to do and what he's not required to do. And there's back and forth. If you heard about new home construction, a lot of builders want to throw out this deal. You can't walk on the roof within a year, it voids the warranty. Not true. the ROC said, that's enough. That's not going to happen because they're having a lot of issues, like the inspector that likes to hammer people. And he's been on the roof lately and found dryer vents that come out the roof. A lot of times they get beat up, and when they're installed, the flappers don't open. If that thing stays closed and lint builds up in the pipe, you're going to have a fire. So you're truly doing a disservice to say that you can't be on that roof and it's going to void the warranty, but they can't void the warranty per the ROC because that's not going to happen. I ran into one the other day. Right after I heard about all of that, I'm like, well, I've been checking stuff for a while and we're not required to get on that roof. We can drone it. You can use binoculars. You can use a ladder, but you can't reach some of those vents from that viewpoint. So it's nice to get up there and actually check it. So I ran into a bad dryer vent and it was trapped shut and it was a brand new home. They hadn't even signed papers on it yet. So things can happen. Yes.
I know there's a time limit for the septic system. It has to be inspected within 18 months.
6 months.
6 months, 6 months. What about wells? Is there anything on wells that you know?
I specifically cannot answer that.
They don't even have to do a well inspection.
Oh, I just went to school. Yeah, I think they're asking something. When did you say it was in 6 months?
6 months is the septic.
It has to be done.
Yeah. The
I don't know that
septic is-
it's required. I think it may be recommend, I don't know that
Yeah,
it's required.
Yeah, to where I very seldom
Yeah, I was
get
gonna
a
say
well
that.
search. I do a lot of wells because I do a lot of town hall. So
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
folks that don't know Julia with Rock
Yeah.
Title, so that's, she comes down to these meetings to help us
Oh,
with these
good.
types of questions. So thank you.
Yes, and you're right about that. Me personally, if I were doing a home that had a well, I would want it inspected.
you'll have.
I'd at least want a water test.
The lender sometimes will request it, or I've had where, we've had to go on it, sometimes if it's in the water district, then we've had to go on and pull the last inspection reports or quality reports from that. Area.
What is the report? Is it how much water is coming out of it, or is
It's
it
the
the quality of
chemical,
water?
it's the
or
quality,
Just the quality.
It's the quality.
quality and the content, yeah.
And we,
That's litigation case, but it's pretty-
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people get liable.
yes,
I had a case where the realtor went in, checked the waters and goes, I mean, it's interesting set of facts.
yeah.
And she claimed the water was okay, and she got pulled into a lawsuit because it's
Oh,
it's up in Wales.
right. We do offer those services as well. We do third party that one, but we do the well and the septic. So we have that capability as well. It is.
There's actually, one of the officers that worked for me at a Peoria office bought a house in Litchfield or Litchfield. Park.
Hmm.
And the whole water through that water district is bad to where they were, I think they probably got it resolved now, but they were having to do bottled water and everything else for the whole house.
Mhm.
This was just a few years ago.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
she just
I think I heard about it.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and shut down
Okay.
our meeting, but thank you so much, Ben. I
Absolutely.
appreciate some of your pens and things.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
One thing that Ben's a little too modest to brag about is they have 9 inspectors at PGI. And all but one of them have extensive experience in construction. They also do commercial. So go on their website and read their bios. We also have one guy that's fluent in Spanish. So if you have Spanish speaking clients, we have an inspector that can accommodate them.
Yeah, and I had Art, speaking
Let me.
officer as well.
Good deal.
One of my assistants. Debbie's also there.
I'm trying to end. My recording stopped, but I need to end my meeting.
Mhm.